The Israeli military says it's killed 8 more Palestinians in the West Bank. That brings the total number of people killed to 19 since just Wednesday, making it Israel's deadliest operation in the occupied territory since the start of the war in Gaza. Israel says the raids across the northern West Bank are aimed at preventing attacks, while Palestinians see them as a widening of the war and an effort to perpetuate Israel's decades-long military rule over the territory. Well, for more, let's cross to our correspondent Irris Makler, who joins us from Jerusalem. Irris, it's been quite a rapid escalation in the West Bank, and the death toll has quickly climbed. What's the latest we know so far?
What we know is that 3 days ago, Israel began this series of raids in 3 towns in the northern West Bank, 2 towns in the village, Tulkarem, Tubas and Jenin. Today, its troops have withdrawn from Tulkarem and Tubas, but continue with Jenin. Jenin, always a militant stronghold. You'll remember back in 2014, during the Second Intifada, Jeningrad in its fight, it was called by the Palestinians Jeningrad, in its fight with Israel. So we are seeing an escalation such as we have not seen, because it's ground troops, it's air troops, or air attack, mostly drones, in fact. And what the Palestinians are saying is that this is an extension of what we have seen in Gaza. And Israel says that, on the contrary, it's the militant groups, Hamas and Islamic Jihad, who are expanding their operations in the West Bank because they can see what great losses the militant groups are suffering. Those militant groups are suffering in Gaza. And so you have this continued friction. We have seen it. It hasn't been an escalation. Perhaps we haven't been reporting it as much because of Gaza, because of the Lebanese border. But now, because of this 3-day operation, it is getting perhaps the reporting that it deserves. There's been great concern, I have to say, internationally. Today, we've heard from French leaders, from British leaders, joining the UN 2 days ago when all this began. So great concern about where this is going in the West Bank.
And the polio vaccinations will be rolled out on Sunday. Israel will be sectioning zones of the enclave to carry those out. It's, of course, a very necessary and welcome step, but there are so many basic needs and medical needs that still need to be addressed in the enclave.
That's right. What the World Health Organization says is that it has an aim of vaccinating 640,000 children aged under 10. What they're calling for is a ceasefire to be able to allow them to do that safely and effectively, as well as treating all the other health issues that have emerged during this now almost 11 months of war. They have not been able to obtain a ceasefire. What they have is what they call a preliminary commitment from Israel to allow them from Sunday 3 days of 9-hour periods where there'll be no fighting, humanitarian pauses, so that they can carry out those vaccinations, and a negotiation possibly to extend it, if that goes on. But we've just seen, they're doing it because it's urgent, obviously. There's also the fact that a World Food Programme convoy going in from Israel to Gaza was shot at within the last 3 days. They've now suspended their operations until further notice. So it's urgent because of the health needs. It's urgent because of the security needs. And I think a ceasefire, they are saying, is still the best way forward.
And let's talk a bit more about the ceasefire talks then, because, it seems like one step forward is met with 2 steps back. Where are we currently with those discussions?
The discussions are ongoing, but they don't address the major issues. They're addressing all the other issues, they say, but the major sticking points, which are, will Israeli troops remain in the Gaza Strip, particularly along what Israel calls the Philadelphia corridor, that is the border between Gaza and Egypt. There's Palestinian Hamas opposition to that. There's Egyptian opposition to that. And overnight, we've just seen the Israeli cabinet voting for Israel's military to remain in that strip, in that area of land, in the Philadelphia corridor. It was opposed by the defence minister. It was a surprise vote that the prime minister held after he and the defence minister had a disagreement about that. But nevertheless, the cabinet has backed the prime minister, and the families of the hostages say that this only makes the hostage deal, the ceasefire deal, less likely. And we know how pressing that is for Israeli civilians and Palestinian civilians. However their leaders see is the best way to get at it. It's definitely an urgent need on the ground.